The village of Osso was quiet, but the school was abuzz with excitement. The sun blazed high in the sky, casting a heavy warmth over the dry red earth. Children from all over the village had gathered at the school, their faces glowing with excitement as they anticipated the announcement from their teacher, Mr. Okoro. The headmaster was known for his stern ways, but also for his brilliant mind and high expectations. His students often said that it was under his leadership that the school had gained a reputation for excellence, despite its humble setting. Cheema was one of the school's brightest students. Though still young, his quick mind and knack for solving problems had made him a favorite among the teachers. He was particularly proud of his ability to think outside the box, skills honed not only by his schoolwork but by the challenges he faced growing up in Osso. The village had its share of struggles, the most pressing being the lack of clean, accessible water. It was a problem that had affected his family for generations, and Cheema had always dreamed of finding a solution. When the students settled into their seats, Mr. Okoro cleared his throat and stood in front of them, his hands clasped behind his back. "Today, we are going to have a challenge," he announced in his deep voice. "This will not be like any ordinary lesson. You will use not only your knowledge, but your creativity and your problem-solving skills." Cheema straightened up, feeling a rush of excitement. This was the kind of challenge he had been waiting for. Mr. Okoro continued, "Our village faces many challenges, but the most pressing one is our access to clean water. We have been relying on a distant, contaminated stream for years, and it is no longer a sustainable solution. It is up to you, the students of this school, to come up with a creative and practical solution to this problem." The room fell silent. This was a challenge like no other. It wasn't just about grades, it was about the future of their village. A challenge that could have real-life consequences. "You will be working in pairs," Mr. Okoro said, "and you have 2 hours to come up with a solution and present it to the class. Remember, creativity and practicality are key." Cheema looked around at his classmates, their eyes wide with anticipation. He felt a surge of pride, knowing that this was his moment to shine. Cheema was partnered with Imani, a quiet and thoughtful girl who had always kept to herself. She was known for her hardworking nature and sharp mind, though she rarely spoke out in class. Cheema admired her dedication to her studies and believed they could make a strong team. "Imani, do you have any ideas on how we can solve the water problem?" Cheema asked, eager to get started. Imani looked thoughtful for a moment, her dark eyes narrowing in concentration. "What if we create a water filtration system? We could use materials from around the village, sand, charcoal, and clay. They could help purify the water before it reaches our homes." Cheema's eyes lit up. "Yes, that could work. We could create a multi-layer filter. Sand for filtering out larger particles, charcoal for purifying, and clay to catch the smallest impurities. It's simple, sustainable, and uses materials we already have." Imani nodded. "And once we build the filters, we can teach the villagers how to construct them too. It would be a community-wide solution." Cheema smiled. "That's exactly what we need. Let's get started." The 2 of them set to work, drawing up plans for the filtration system. They made sure their design was not only functional but easy to build. The idea was to create a solution that would work for every family in the village, using the few resources available to them. Cheema's mind raced as he thought through the logistics. "We need to design a simple, step-by-step guide for the villagers. If we can get them to work together, this could really change things." Imani added, "We can also demonstrate how the filtration system works at the school. That way, the villagers will see the process in action and understand how easy it is to use." The next day, Cheema and Imani gathered their materials, sand, charcoal, and clay, and began constructing the filtration system in the schoolyard. They dug shallow pits to mimic the layers of the filter they had designed. The sand was poured into the bottom of the pit, followed by a layer of charcoal, and topped with a layer of clay. They then used a piece of old cloth as a cover to help filter out the smallest particles. "Now, we need to test it," Cheema said, his voice filled with anticipation. "We'll use water from the stream to see if it actually works." Imani nodded, her hands trembling slightly. They carefully collected water from the nearby stream, a place where the villagers often fetched water. The water was murky, polluted with dirt and other impurities. Cheema poured the water into the filtration system, watching as it trickled through the layers. The water that emerged on the other side was clear, remarkably clear. Cheema's face lit up with excitement. It worked. We've done it. Imani smiled, her face glowing with pride. Now, we just need to show the villagers how to build their own systems. The day of the presentation arrived, and the classroom was filled with eager students, each ready to share their ideas. When it was Cheema and Imani's turn, they stood up, their hearts racing with nerves. The village elders and other community members had been invited to the school to witness the presentations, and Cheema could feel the weight of their gaze upon him. We've come up with a solution to the village's water problem, Cheema began, his voice steady despite the nerves. We've designed a simple water filtration system using sand, charcoal, and clay. These materials are all found in our village, and we believe this system can help provide clean water to every home. Imani stepped forward, holding up the demonstration filter they had built the day before. The system works by filtering out impurities from the water. The sand removes larger particles, the charcoal purifies the water, and the clay catches the smallest contaminants. It's simple, cost-effective, and sustainable. The villagers watched in silence, their faces a mixture of skepticism and hope. Cheema and Imani poured a fresh batch of water from the stream into the filter, and the crowd gasped as the water that came out on the other side was clear and clean. We've tested this system ourselves, Cheema continued, and it works. We believe that if we all work together, we can bring this solution to every home in the village. There was a moment of silence, and then the room erupted in applause. The villagers were moved by the simplicity and effectiveness of the solution. Many of them, who had long suffered from the contaminated water, were eager to learn how they could build the system in their own homes. Over the next few weeks, Cheema and Imani led workshops for the villagers, teaching them how to construct the filtration systems. They showed families how to gather the materials, how to layer the sand, charcoal, and clay, and how to maintain the filters. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon the entire village was using the filtration systems. Word of their success spread, and other villages in the region began to take notice. Cheema and Imani were invited to speak at neighboring villages, where they shared their design and helped others build their own filters. What had started as a classroom challenge had turned into a movement that was changing the way people thought about education, innovation, and community. As the weeks passed, the village of Osso began to flourish. Children were healthier, families were drinking clean water, and Cheema's dream of solving the village's water crisis had become a reality. It was a victory not just for Cheema and Imani, but for the entire village. Mr. Okoro, who had watched the progress with great pride, called Cheema and Imani into his office one afternoon. "You've done something remarkable," he said, his voice soft with admiration. "You've taken a challenge and turned it into a solution. This is what education is all about, not just learning from books, but applying that knowledge to make a real difference." Cheema smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Thank you, sir. We couldn't have done it without your challenge." Mr. Okoro smiled back. "No, Cheema. You did it because you believed in the power of education, and you took action." And so, with that, Cheema and Imani had not only solved the problem, they had started a new chapter in the story of their village, a chapter written with the ink of determination, creativity, and hope. As the success of their filtration system spread across the village, Cheema and Imani were invited to neighboring communities to showcase their idea. The villagers of Osso were eager to share their newfound knowledge with others, and soon, the ripple effect of their innovation reached neighboring villages that had been struggling with the same water issues. One afternoon, Cheema and Imani, along with a few trusted classmates, set out to visit a village called Obio, which lay several miles away from Osso. The road to Obio was rough and winding, cutting through dense patches of trees and hilly terrain. Cheema could already feel a sense of pride swelling within him, knowing that their village's success could be shared and adopted by others who needed it just as much. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a crowd of curious villagers, many of whom had heard about the water filtration system but had yet to see it for themselves. A group of village elders stood at the front, their faces etched with years of hardship and determination. Their eyes, however, held a flicker of hope as they watched the young students prepare to demonstrate their solution. Imani spoke first, explaining the simple yet effective design of the filtration system. This system can be built with just a few materials that are readily available in most villages: sand, charcoal, and clay, she explained. These materials work together to filter out the impurities in the water, making it safe to drink. Cheema followed, pulling out the same demonstration filter they had used in Osso. We've seen firsthand how this system can improve our health. It's affordable and sustainable, and it doesn't require any expensive technology. All it takes is a little effort and a willingness to work together. The demonstration was a success. The villagers were fascinated by the simplicity of the system. When the water from the nearby stream was filtered through their device, it came out clear and pure. The crowd erupted in applause, their faces lighting up with excitement. Over the next few days, Cheema and Imani led workshops in Obio, showing the villagers how to construct their own filters. They worked together, gathering the materials, building the filtration systems, and testing them. By the end of the week, the entire village was equipped with their own water filtration devices, and the villagers were eager to share what they had learned with neighboring towns. "Thank you, Cheema and Imani," the chief of Obio said, his voice filled with gratitude. "You've given us not just a way to purify our water, but a sense of hope. Your hard work and innovation have made a real difference for us." Cheema felt a rush of emotion. It was one thing to help his own village, but to see the impact of their work spreading to other communities filled him with a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was no longer just about schoolwork, it was about creating a lasting change in the world around him. As Cheema and Imani continued to visit other villages, their efforts began to gain attention beyond just their region. Local newspapers in nearby towns picked up the story, and soon, word of the water filtration system reached even larger cities. Journalists from across the country wanted to interview Cheema and Imani, eager to learn about the young students who had found such a simple, yet effective, solution to a centuries-old problem. One day, a reporter from a national newspaper arrived in Osso, asking to interview Cheema and Imani about their innovative project. The young students were a little nervous at first, but they spoke confidently about their idea and the impact it had made. The reporter was so impressed that she wrote a feature article about them, calling them the young innovators of Osso. The article sparked a wave of interest in educational programs that encouraged young people to tackle real-world problems. Organizations that promoted sustainable development reached out to Cheema and Imani, offering support for their initiative. They were invited to conferences and workshops where they could share their solution with experts in the field of water purification and community development. Their attention brought many new opportunities, but Cheema remained grounded. Despite the recognition, he never lost sight of the reason behind his efforts, to help his community and others like it. He continued working closely with Imani, developing new ways to improve their filtration system and ensuring that every village they visited could implement the solution on their own. Months passed, and the water filtration systems became a staple in many rural villages across the region. The number of people who had benefited from Cheema and Imani's work continued to grow, and the once neglected schools in many of these villages began to thrive as well. The children were healthier, the elders were stronger, and the sense of community pride had never been higher. In Osso, the school had become a symbol of progress. Mr. Okoro, the headmaster, was proud of the students' achievements and often spoke of how their work had inspired not just the village, but the entire region. One day, Cheema and Imani were invited to the local government office, where they were presented with an award for their contribution to the improvement of public health in rural communities. It was a small ceremony, but to Cheema, it felt like a major milestone in his journey. He had never imagined that a simple school project would lead to something so transformative. As Cheema accepted the award, he thought back to the moment when Mr. Okoro had challenged them to think creatively. He had never imagined that something so small would lead to such a large impact. The award was not just for him and Imani, it was for every student who had believed in the power of education to create change. "We never thought we'd be here today," Cheema said, his voice steady as he spoke into the microphone. "This all started with an idea. and the belief that education can solve the problems we face in our communities. I hope that what we've done here will inspire others to take action and make a difference in their own villages, towns, and cities. The applause from the audience filled the room, and Cheema smiled, feeling the weight of the journey they had taken. What had started as a challenge from a headmaster had blossomed into a movement that was changing lives. As Cheema stood on the stage, looking out at the faces of the villagers, government officials, and students gathered to celebrate their success, he realized that the work was far from over. There were still many villages that had not yet heard of the filtration system, and there were still communities that faced similar challenges. But as he looked at Imani, who stood beside him, her eyes shining with pride, he knew that they had created something powerful. It wasn't just the water filtration system that had made a difference, it was the spark of innovation, the belief that every challenge could be met with creativity and determination, and the willingness to work together as a community. "We've only just begun," Cheema said softly, almost to himself. "There's so much more we can do." And as the villagers cheered and the sun began to set over the horizon, Cheema knew that the journey he had started with a simple school project had grown into something that would last for generations. The power of education, community, and creativity had brought Oso village, and many others, closer to a future they could all be proud of.